and whippoorwill call. And evening is night, I hurry to my blue heaven.
Yeah, g'day and welcome to My Blue Heaven, episode number 27. Boys have got a bye this weekend, then a game out west against the Fremantle Dockers. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity just to take a little bit of stock, have a look at the progress of some of our players this season thus far. It's hard to believe there's only 9 games left in 2019. We've played 13 already. We sit on the bottom of the ladder and only 2 wins. So there's still plenty to play for individually. It's going to be a really interesting finish to the season to see whether some of these boys can get back into the form, whether some can sustain their form, and a lot of players out of contract as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break this up into 3 parts. Today, I'm just going to speak about jumper numbers 1 through to 11. And then I'll concentrate on the other jumper numbers in another episode over the coming days. So I thought I'd start with Jack Silvani, and what better place to start with Jack Silvani, because he's had what would be described as an indifferent season thus far. Played just the 8 games, didn't make his debut until I think it was the round 5 game against the Western Bulldogs, and arguably probably his best game, where he collected the 18 disposals. Only averaged the 12 disposals in his 8 games, is made to work really hard for his spot in the team. I don't think we're any wiser to understand where Jack actually fits into our best 22 at this stage. Dropped after the Brisbane game, which was a bit of a shock. Definitely needs to go back and work on a number of aspects of his game, including his marking, particularly his contested marking. Got his hands to a number of balls in that game against the Lions, but unfortunately was unable to hold on to many, if any at all. It's only taken the 4 contested grabs for the season. Just needs to make much more of an impact at AFL level, Jack Silvani. We can see he goes back and works really hard on his game. But when you're only picking up the 12 disposals, he's kicked 6 goals and only had 10 scoring shots for the season thus far. It's probably just not good enough for a medium-sized forward. He just needs to get more strings to his bow. He works really hard at ground level, but he probably needs to do more than that. He needs to get a lot more dangerous. So my question is, where does he fit into our team, particularly with having McGovern, Charlie, and also Harry Mackay in our forward 50? Does he have a role there? Can he go back? Can he go into the midfield? I don't think so. I think his best position will be as a forward. But at AFL level, he'll get another opportunity this year. He just needs to make more of an impact. What I'd like to see going forward, he is out of contract, which makes it very interesting. At 21 years of age in his 4th season, what are the club going to do with him moving forward? I'd like to see him sign to a 2-year contract, but that will be dependent on the back half of his season moving forward. So he's played the 51 games, which is a really good start. He works hard, he shows glimpses, but just not enough at AFL levels. So the big question mark for Jack Silvani is whether he has the attributes to be a consistent player at AFL level and have an impact. He needs to have an impact, needs to kick more goals, needs to take more marks. On to number 2, Paddy Dow. We're starting to have a lot of whipping boys from a supporter perspective. And I reckon Paddy Dow this year has turned into one of those, which is really disappointing. Still 19 years of age. The good thing about Paddy Dow is he's got a really durable body. He's hardly missed any football. He's played the 13 games thus far. He's got a slightly better average in terms of his disposals. He's running at 16 disposals a game this year compared to the 14 last year. It mightn't seem a lot, but across the board, when you're still young in your 2nd season, I think that's significant for him. Has been asked to shoulder a bit in the centre square. We know he's a very good clearance player. We know he's got explosive pace. We know he can do some really smart things. But the big question mark now on Paddy Dow is his kicking. Seems to be down on a lot of confidence with his kicking, particularly set shots at goal. What I have seen from a real positive this year is he can take a mark overhead. Paddy Dow, which I hadn't seen in his game last year. Who could forget that game in the JLT last year when he burst onto the scene? Everyone was calling him Paddy Wow and saying he was the next best thing. How we just have these really high expectations on these kids. My concern, the kicking, I didn't see that same concern last year, so hopefully it's just a confidence thing, and he just needs to build body size. Really, and you see this in his tackling, is unable to really stick tackles and doesn't have a real massive presence around the ball just because of his sheer size at the moment. I reckon he's learning on the job, which is a really good thing. In an ideal world, if we had players underneath the likes of Matthew Kennedy and Darcy Lang putting heaps of pressure on, then maybe he could have a spell in the seconds. But at this stage, we just don't have that depth coming through. So he is, as I said, learning on the job. The question, has he been gifted games? Maybe some. He had a poor game against the Western Bulldogs on the weekend, which was probably his worst of the season. He's been fairly consistent. I just hope that he really has a great break. I think he needs it. Time to get away and reassess in the back half of the season. I don't think we're going to see Paddy Dow's best football probably for another 18 to 24 months. We've just got to give these kids time to grow. He's got some special attributes, and I'm sure we're going to see him over the coming years, and hopefully we'll see a few more of those in the back half of the season. Let's go on to Marc Murphy, the former skipper. Oh, look, he's become a whipping boy as well, hasn't he? And that's really disappointing, a champion of the club. And it's got to this stage now. I think it was a real breakout. It's hard to say that our second most experienced player had a breakout game on the weekend. I thought his second half against the Western Bulldogs was significant. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the change rooms at half time, what David Teague said to him, because it certainly worked. Chucked him into the midfield, and he turned the game, I thought, in that third quarter. 10 disposals, was really good around the contest, used the ball beautifully, and he looked like he was back to his old self. I hope that's a sign of things to come for Marc Murphy. I think he's a true midfielder. I think he's taken liberty of the fact that Bolton wanted a really young midfield and let that grow for the future. And I thought pushing Marc Murphy onto a wing, he took the license to see that just to be as an outside player. And I really think it was detrimental to his own game. He's a pure midfielder, can hunt the footy, he's good on the outside. He's probably still one of our most classiest players. He's still got a good amount of speed. So I reckon it's going to be a really, really exciting last 9 games for Marc Murphy. Let's hope he can hold his body together. Was crunched by Shane Munford in that game against the Giants, and he's rebounded pretty well. Look, he's got another year at the club, and let's just hope he enjoys his football and can leave a real big legacy on this young team moving forward. And hopefully next year we can have a little bit more success because he certainly deserves it. Let's move on to Lockie O'Brien. I reckon his last 2 games have been really good. The game against the Lions and the game against the Western Bulldogs on the weekend were by far his best 2 games of the season. He was all at sea in the opening part of the year. Didn't play his first game, was overlooked in the opening rounds of the season, was told to go back to the VFL, but wasn't really allowed to go back to the VFL and work on his game. He was rushed back in. There was rumours around the club that, the messaging for him was inconsistent. They wanted him to work on certain aspects of his game, but he wasn't allowed to show those aspects at AFL level. He was confused. He looked confused. He looked anything but a top 10 draft pick. I still think there's a question mark on whether he is a top 10 draft pick at this stage. But he's played the 26 games. He's still 19 like Paddy Dow. He's got some really good attributes in that he can run, and he's generally a really good user of the football. His disposal count is down on last year, but as I said, those last 2 games are hopefully a sign of things to come for Lockie O'Brien moving forward into the second half of the season. Let's go on to Sam Petreski-Seaton. Another player that seems to divide Carlton supporters. It's really disappointing that their younger players in their first, second and third years are the players that are dividing our supporters at the moment. I think he's been pretty consistent this season. Paddy Dow, still 21 years of age, played and if we're talking about durability, he is Mr. Durable, Sam Petreski-Seton. Played every game last year and he's played the 13 this year. Standout game, and it was a career-defining game for him, 35 possessions against the Western Bulldogs back in round 5. Showed us what he is capable of, but it is, I suppose, staying involved in games, which is the next thing that Sam Petreski-Seton will want to work on. Another one that's been thrust straight into the midfield, hasn't had time to grow as either a winger or a half forward, has been trialled a little bit down back. He's one of our best ball users. He's clean in traffic. He's got a lot of time. You always feel safe when he's got the ball in his hands, Sam Petreski-Seton, but we just like to see in the last 9 games of the season, whether he can have just a bit more impact, particularly on the scoreboard. 3 goals for him this season of a bloke of his class is probably not good enough. And I just think what he does add that probably a couple of our other younger players don't add is really good tackling pressure. He's averaging 5 tackles a game, and that's been pretty consistent across his 3 years in the competition so far. So it hasn't been a standout season by Sam Petreski-Seton, but I reckon we're pretty excited to see what he's got to offer in the back half of this season and moving forward in the midfield. Let's go to the veteran of the footy club, Cade Simpson. I'm going to put it on the table now that this will be his last season. Not that I don't think he can go on next year. I think he probably could, but I think it would be probably not so much a bad move, but maybe a season too long. I think there's been signs over the last 24 months that the time is near now. Last year it was his ball use that was a concern. I think that's tidied up, but now there's been a huge drop in his ability to win the ball. Thought he was outstanding against the Western Bulldogs on the weekend, kept us in it in the first half. He's 4th on the all-time games list at the Carlton Football Club. He can't go past Big Nick. He probably deserves to. He's just been a great warrior for us. I've always said that I'd love to see him finish his career, move further up the ground, maybe onto a wing across half forward, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening. I just think he's been fantastic, but I think this will be his last year, and I wouldn't be surprised if he makes an announcement, maybe in the last couple of weeks that will be his last year, which will be very, very sad. But I think the time has come. He's now, missing games through soreness, hamstring injuries. And I just don't think he is the same player anymore. And we have seen at times this year, particularly in bad losses, how frustrated he does get. Let's go on to Matthew Kennedy. Absolutely shit house. Let's just put it on the table. Very, very, very disappointing. I suppose with Matthew Kennedy, let's talk about it in a positive. Oh, I didn't start with a positive. I've called it shit house, but his performance this year have been shit house. From a positive, he's just turned 22, and he's only in his 4th season, so it's the same draft as Wiedering, Curnow, Harry, and Cunningham. So I think from that perspective, you could say that he has still got some time, but I think his time is running out, and I think he may be gone at the end of the year as well. It's just been very, very disappointing. Lack of work rate in the 2 games he played this year. Terrible against Essendon at the MCG. It was just a shocking performance by him. Had a real chance to make an impact after playing in the VFL and being overlooked. And he came in. He just looked so off the pace. Very, very surprising. Not quite sure what is wrong. I mean, it was the injuries last year. I don't think we can blame his body. As I mentioned, he's out of contract. I just don't think we can take a risk, and it'd have to be 1 year at max, because you'd be absolutely godspacked if the club came out and said that they signed, Matthew Kennedy a 2 to 3 year contract, because he's just shown absolutely nothing. It's brought to the club to give assistance to Patrick Cripps. What is his strengths? Because he hasn't really shown it so far. Doesn't tackle that well. Hasn't been a great clearance player. Can't break away from the stoppage. He's just been very average. Goes back to the VFL, racks up some numbers, but has very, very little impact. But he was highly rated, He picked 13 in that draft. Tigers bidded for him before GWS matched the bid. So, and then the Tigers went after Hipwood. Just so disappointing, Matthew Kennedy, and I can't see him being at the club next year unless he pulls his finger out and has a huge last 9 games, and there's no guarantee that he'll be playing in the coming weeks anyway. Let's get on to Matthew Cruiser. I'm going to put it on the table now that Matthew Cruiser, is the barometer of our football team. And I think he is equal, if not more important to our football team than Patrick Cripps. A lot of you out there might disagree with that. And it's not about statistics with Cruz. It's not about how many hit-outs he gets. It's not about, how many goals he takes or how many marks he takes. It's just about his presence on the football field. Whenever he's not out there, and if he's injured and we've got Lobie or we've got Phillips, we just look a completely different team. Yeah, sure, he's been beaten a number of times this year in parts of the game. I thought English got hold of him early, but it was Matthew Cruiser along with Marc Murphy in that second half that got us going. His presence around the ball is so significant to us. Let's just hope his body isn't too banged up. Let's see if we can eke at least another year, possibly 2 more years out of him. We're just very lucky we've got Andrew Russell looking after him at the moment. Let's not forget though, in 2016 and 17, he played combined 42 games. And last year he missed a chunk of the season, only played 12 because of the heart condition. They seem to have that under control. He's had a few little niggles this year, but we're just hoping he can hang on for at least another 24 months, at least for another year, and hopefully Tom DeConning can come on in that time, or we can draft in another younger ruckman, because he's so important for us, Matthew Cruiser, and he's just been a wonderful warrior for a football club. So that's the first 8 players. Let's maybe go now to, I'm going to only go up to number 11. Let's go to Paddy Cripps now. I reckon from an individual performance on the ground, I reckon this might sound a little bit funny, but I think his season has been just a tad overrated externally. I reckon internally, he'd be very hard on himself in a number of games. We know the games where he didn't play well, he was tagged out of it by De Boer and young Clark. I thought his first half against North Melbourne was really poor as well, but apparently he was crooked that day. But there's been a number of games where he's fallen out late in games when we've had opportunities to win. I reckon he'd be savage on himself, and I reckon he'd be working really hard to rectify that. And he certainly did that against the Brisbane Lions in that game, where he was just absolutely outstanding. But I think in saying, he's an outstanding season. I just don't think it's as good as what a lot of people are saying. I hate the Messiah effect of our football club, that everything's about Patrick Cripps. He doesn't want that. We don't need that. We need other players to grow. He's that bloody good, it's going to be hard to get to his level, but we need other players to bridge that gap so we can become a really good team. We can't be just relying on him to carry the load, because we see the detrimental effect that has if he is taken out of the game. He needs to start to learn how to break a tag. That is pretty obvious. And the thing that I want to see with Patrick Cripps moving forward, and this is incumbent upon us becoming a better team and getting some more quality into the midfield, is I think we want to see him go forward more often. I think he's got the ability to kick your 30 plus goals in a season. If he's allowed to spend say 60% in the midfield, 40% forward. We rarely see it. We saw it a bit against the Lions, but we rarely see it. I don't think we saw it at all against the Western Bulldogs. I just think he could become such a dangerous player and such a really difficult matchup there. And he's showing that he can kick goals. That will be a luxury for us moving forward. I love him. We all love Patrick Cripps, but let's not fall into the trap that it's all about Patrick Cripps, because I reckon internally he'd be thinking he wants other players to come to the party, just not himself. Harry McKay, thought he started the season tremendously well. I reckon the last 4 games have been disappointing is not a right word, because you could see that he was wanting the break. You know, you look at his contested marks, his numbers are a little bit down from last year. He played 13 games last year. He's played the 13 this year, which is a positive. But he's down in goals, but he's up in scoring shots. So he's getting more looks on goal. His contested marking is up, which has been fantastic. He leads the competition, 31 contested marks, the best contested mark in the competition. And amazingly, 24 of those contested marks came in the opening 6 rounds, which shows a drop-off in Harry's output in the I suppose the last 5 or 6 weeks, which suggests to me that he probably needs a little bit work harder in leading up at the ball. I have noticed that he gets corralled in a lot, and he's quite happy for his opponent to take front spot, and his body strength at this stage isn't allowing to really push up and demand a bit more of a presence inside that forward 50. I think it's very exciting to see what's going to happen with Harry going forward. You know, the combination of Curnow, of Charlie and McGovern's going to be fantastic for us moving forward. It's been a real plus, Harry Mackay, this year. Hopefully the break does him wonders and he can come back in the second half of the season. What's he kicked? He's kicked the 19 goals this season, kicked 21 last year. So he's 2 down on last year's output at this stage. He's got 9 games left. I think the expectation, if he can kick, say, 2 a game in the final rounds, you know, he's pushing up towards 40, which would be a pretty good result for Harry Mackay, who's still 21 years of age. The last player I wanted to speak about in part 1 is Mitch McGovern. Okay. Mitchy. I'm just going to say, I've really enjoyed his moments this season. He's frustrated the hell out of me, I suppose, in the last, say, 3 or 4 weeks, particularly against the Western Bulldogs. I just think he's best, and this is the difference between, say, Mitch McGovern and a Jack Silvani. So you're wondering why I say Mitch doesn't, you know, why can't Jack play? The difference is when Mitch gets the ball, he makes an impact. You know, he's a great kick on goal. He's kicked 16 goals, only 16-4. We'd like to see a little bit more shots on goal from Mitch McGovern, but he's a dead-eye dick in front of the big sticks. He can take a grab. We'd like to see him lead up with the ball carrier a little bit more. He's got into the habit of flying from behind. His contested marks are down compared to the 15 he took at the Crows in similar games last year. So that's a little bit down. So whether it's his timing or getting used to the way we play, whether it's a confidence thing, I'm not quite sure. But I think we're just going to have to understand that Mitch McGovern is an impact player. He's not going to be a 15, 16, 17, 18 disposal, 9 marks, kick 4 goals, 5, or whatever that may be. He might pull one of those out of his ass every now and then. But I think he's your 8, 9 disposals, 4 marks, and kicks 3 goals straight. And that's all we need from him. So if Charlie, Harry, and Mitch McGovern can work in unison, and between the 3, they're kicking upwards about 100 goals across the year, then we're happy with that. So if McGovern has a poor day, but the other 2 play okay, and we're winning games of football, which we're not at the moment, we'll be happy that. I just think we probably just need to chill a little bit with Harry, with Mitch McGovern. You know, he wouldn't be particularly happy with his own form. I think he's capable of doing a little bit more. But at this stage, I'm reasonably comfortable with his output so far in 2019. Another player expecting a lot of in the last 9 games of the season. That's a bit of a wrap from Jumpers numbers 1 through to 11. I'll be back over the next couple of days with some more player reviews. Hope you're well. If you like these videos, please subscribe. Get on to the League Tees website. This is a fantastic. Have a look at this Avco t-shirt from the boys from League Tees. And if you have a look at that jumper just over here in the background, here's my old under-19s football jumper. And up the top there, it's got the old Avco Finance badge right in the left-hand corner there. So I'll see you guys again shortly on My Blue Heaven.